So Sonian is simple, affordable archiving for enterprise email, files, and documents to solve the compliant search and retrieval pain point that most every business has today. And I'll get into that a little bit later. First, I want to give you a quick background of my journey to the cloud, which ties into the mission of Sonian, which will then reaffirm many of the themes we heard about today regarding how Amazon's providing this innovative, disruptive cloud infrastructure that's letting ISVs and enterprises do things that they couldn't do before just as recently as 5 years ago. So my journey to the cloud begins actually 8 years ago when I was trying to launch a SaaS business from a vendor that's no longer around anymore. A company called Sun Microsystems was trying to do a cloud offering in 2004 era. They couldn't get the price points down. They were charging $1 per CPU hour, $1 per gigabyte per month for storage. And as an ISV, as an application vendor, I couldn't make those economics work, and I was forced to go out and build a co-located data center to host my SaaS application, raised millions of dollars of venture funding, $2 million went out the door to build the co-located facility, and we were ultimately successful at that product. Our co-located provider bought the business in 2006. And at that point, I was primed and ready to embrace a real cloud offering. So I'd already lived through the pain of trying to make a false cloud work because the economics didn't match up with where I needed to be on price. I built out a legacy data center co-located model that was very painful, very distracting from really focusing on my core mission. And when I saw what Amazon Web Services was doing in that 2006, 2007 timeframe, the light bulb moment went off. And my mission then was to figure out a way to make the cloud as we knew it back then appropriate for an enterprise audience. And I actually remember meeting one of our previous speakers here in the room, Janesh, at a grassroots Amazon event in 2007 in Portland, Oregon, where he had a very skeptical audience of developers really questioning whether the cloud was real or not. And I can tell you, fast forward 5 years later, it certainly is. So Sonian is an example of a successful venture-backed startup that is purely cloud-based. It's solving an enterprise pain point, which means we get to be a relatively small, efficient team behind the scenes solving a big problem for a big audience, and Amazon makes that possible. I couldn't be doing what I'm doing today without Amazon in the mix, because I'd have to be double the size in staff to manage a fully turnkey data center operation to power our application. So my journey to the cloud began 8 years ago. Most recently, it's been firmly entrenched with Amazon, and we're a great example of taking what you heard earlier that was in theory, all the great building blocks that Amazon provides, putting them to practice in a real-world scenario, solving an enterprise pain point, which is all around compliant archiving. So Sonian is a 5-year-old company. We just closed our C round of investment last week. We're in our growth stage now. Amazon's a big part of our ability to grow and scale and to solve an ever-increasing larger audience of customers. Today, we're managing over 9,000 accounts, billions of objects on S3, a petabyte of cloud storage, servicing 350,000 individual employees of the companies that trust us to archive their data. So back to what Sonian does. Simple, affordable archiving. Simple means we're SaaS, we're 15 minutes up and running, nothing to install on-prem, and we take advantage of all the Amazon building blocks to make that happen. Affordable means we're taking advantage of the 19 different price cuts that Amazon has released over the past history of the cloud. We're amplifying that innovation that Amazon provides to us. I firmly believe when you're in the cloud, there's this grand bargain potential where the infrastructure provider like Amazon, which is putting R&D money to work to lower their cost, can pass those savings on to me as the application layer. And me as the application layer, I have to pass those savings on to my customer, because everyone needs to win in the cloud to make this work. It's all about the economics. And you heard that theme consistently over and over earlier in the sessions. It's all about figuring out a way to write code and manage the cloud in a way that lowers the cost substantially compared to what you were paying when you're doing it yourself in your own data center. And Sonian is an example of embodying all that advanced thinking to solve a business pain point. So the reasons you want to archive, there's about half a dozen reasons up here. I'm going to tell you about one specific customer example that illustrates how the power of the cloud solved an immediate pain point this customer had in getting out of a sticky situation. So we have a financial service customer that was in the process of migrating from an on-prem archiving system. They were tired of maintaining it. It was very expensive. The upgrades were taking weekend after weekend of the IT staff's time to migrate a database. It wasn't really going that well. They were planning to jump over to Sonian in a thoughtful, managed process. But wouldn't you know it, they had an inbound inquiry from a compliance board that demanded to have records delivered within a week. The customer couldn't get those records out of their old on-premise archive fast enough. So what they did was, we took advantage of getting Sonian up and running in 15 minutes, get the account created. We used the Amazon import service to move a terabyte of data in a FedEx truck. And I'm going to borrow a line from Dr. Werner Vogels, which is, there's no bandwidth limit on a FedEx truck. We put a terabyte. It was delivered overnight to the cloud. We used Amazon's scale-up principles. We processed a terabyte of data very quickly. And that customer was able to meet that litigation compliance request and didn't suffer a penalty. That's the power of the cloud, working in real-world scenarios for an enterprise audience. And it's the type of application that if you're focused on building an application as an ISV in the audience, or if you're an enterprise customer, this is what awaits you once you make that decision to move to the cloud. One of the things we talked about earlier is where you're going to spend your time focusing. So as an ISV that's innovating on the cloud for an enterprise audience, I'm able to focus on my core expertise. My core expertise is information governance, thinking about archiving, thinking about the best UI for our customers, what we can do to make that experience for our customers better, both from a user experience and a cost and affordability experience. You as the customer purchasing a solution that's powered by the cloud can then get rid of a pain point that you have and a distraction factor and focus on what your core expertise is. It's that idea of inheritance in the cloud. We all inherit the innovation layers that are coming upstream from the infrastructure provider through the application layer all the way to the end customer. And as the IT department or as the application developer in the audience, you can take that inheritance of innovation and amplify it to your customers in a way that's faster and more economical than we've ever seen in the past. So this is our masterpiece. This is what has taken 5 years of hard work to create a reference architecture designed from the Amazon Web Services environment. I'm going to walk through some key components here so you get a sense of how we're taking advantage of Amazon, what we're doing behind the scenes so that we can offer that simple, affordable archiving service. So one of our mission statements is we want to archive the world's electronic documents to the cloud. And in order to do that successfully, we needed to start with a clean sheet of architectural graph paper to build our reference architecture to work intimately with the cloud. So in the old world, in the old SaaS world of co-located development, I would go rent a cage space, I would deploy hardware, that would be a very fixed, rigid infrastructure, and I would layer my application on top of that fixed, rigid infrastructure. And there are very key demarcation points of storage, compute, and networking where my application would touch the physical layer. In the cloud, it's just the opposite. You want to think of your application as DNA that's going to be woven into the cloud DNA and become one with the cloud. And this is the big epiphany that we had early on. To be successful in the cloud, we had to realize that it's a whole different operating world. It's like going to Mars. It's different laws of gravity in effect. But once you make that leap of faith in your mind, you can be successful in the cloud if you make all the right choices. And our previous presenters gave us a roadmap on how to do that, how to think about scaling up and scaling down, how to think about the ideas of turning your web servers off at night when they're not being used and turning them on just right before they need to come to life in the morning to service your accounts. There's all kinds of ways you can game the cloud on cost and expense in order to be successful, because it all ties back to an economic proposition. So going through quickly here on where we take advantage of the different components of Amazon. So we're simple, affordable archiving. The actionable word here, archiving, means that we use S3 for our Bedrock. We trust S3 to manage critical enterprise information, and our customers that trust us to be the curator of their data in the cloud see that inherited trust that happens between us and Amazon. And 5 years ago, this was a bigger mountain to climb. I had to convince investors 5 years ago that we could build a business on the cloud to invest in my company. I had to convince enterprise customers that we could build a business that would be the trustworthy location for the long-term storage of data. If you think about an archive system, that is the last mile of data. There's no backup to the archive. That is where the data lives. A backup solution can go and recrawl the primary if it loses a copy in the backup repository, but the archive is the archive. It is the buck stops here in terms of data. And we trust S3 to be that long-term repository for critical business information. We're layering on encryption. We're using 256-bit AES encryption. It's FIPS 140 validated. We just completed a FISMA moderate ATO with a U.S. government agency in conjunction with Amazon. So it's a great win-win story in terms of thinking that the cloud provider can give you credibility. You add that credibility to your application layer, and then you upsell that to the customer in terms of a rock-solid environment. We're doing things with S3 that allow us to ingest data very quickly. We're taking advantage of all the different techniques mentioned earlier in terms of how you can use cloud storage efficiently. So S3 is one of our very important touch points between our application layer and the Amazon cloud. EC2 is a very important touch point. We believe in that axiom, have the processing as close to the data as possible. For our particular use case, the data and the compute have to be right together on the same high-speed network. Our technology behind the scenes, our safe technology, Sonian Archive File Engine, is a series of stateless processing clusters. The fact that we chose a stateless architecture allows us to take advantage of spot pricing, which we heard about earlier. So we can surf the Amazon price curve and get our lowest cost per CPU hour in any given moment, which we can then in turn pass those savings on to our customer. So this is all about the idea of using the economic advantage to be disruptive with the customer audience. Spot pricing allows us to do that. We also take advantage of reserve pricing, and we take advantage, obviously, of on-demand real-time processing. We're able to arbitrage our compute layer across all the three critical components of how you buy CPU in the cloud. And these are the additional tools that Amazon has given us over the course of the last 5 years, so we can program to their innovation and amplify that innovation back to our customer audience. EBS is a very reliable cloud block store so that we can manage a petabyte scale full text index that allows our customers to search millions and millions of objects and get results back within a second. So we're using Amazon Cloud Block Storage in a clustered fashion. This is an evolving technology behind the scenes for us. We are continually fine-tuning how we take advantage of EBS. It's a great resource. It's very flexible. You can have snapshot checkpoints as backups that go to S3. It's a great tool. There's a lot of techniques behind the scenes on how to efficiently configure EBS for your particular use case, whether you're using it to support a database or some type of static file system. There's lots of great information on how to use EBS in a Stripe fashion for performance, and how to take advantage of some of the newer EC2 nodes that come with 10 gigabit networking, which give you a stronger connection between your EC2 nodes and your EBS volumes. We're also taking advantage of a variety of infrastructure as a service and platform as a service offerings in the cloud. So most of our approach to the cloud has been to focus on infrastructure as a service, which means compute, storage, and networking. EC2 for compute, S3 for storage, and EBS for storage, and the networking components that come with Amazon in terms of virtual private cloud and VPN. But we do take advantage of some higher level platform as a service offerings, specifically RDS for the database. We could stand up our own MySQL instances in the cloud and get a pretty reliable infrastructure set up, but that's a focus issue. We'd be defocused by managing MySQL in the cloud. Why not just get it from Amazon at a lower price, and we're not distracted with having to manage MySQL? SCS is our ability to send out email reliably from the cloud. Prior to SCS, that was kind of a painful initiative to get email to be sent out of EC2 because of the way IP addresses were managed and on block lists. SCS is a way for us to be more economical and more reliable with getting outbound email notifications from our application to our end users' mailboxes. As you're choosing your way into the cloud, you're going to have these choices in front of you as well. You can choose to do the infrastructure as a service route, or you can go up the value chain and develop the platform as a service. You have to weigh the balances of lock-in and cost and complexity, and whether you're going to do it yourself or whether you're going to let someone else do it for you. But the tools are all there to right-size your application for the cloud in the most minute detail possible, so you can always be getting your best economic advantage, and you're not suffering from reliability because the reliability is always there. One of the things we're doing in the cloud is something interesting. We're managing both Linux and Windows nodes automatically, fluidly, using stateless processing again, in a way that allows us to interface with our customer endpoints. So our customers are enterprises. We're not a standalone web app that someone just logs in and uploads a photo to, and the photo just stays there. We make active endpoint connections to our enterprise customers, which means we're talking to enterprise protocols over email protocols and file system protocols. And enterprises expect us to be able to support Windows because that's the predominant platform in place in almost every business out there, even though most of our backend is Linux on top of the cloud. So we perfected the ability to automate launching Windows nodes within the cloud automatically, no human touches, which is the part of the secret success of being in the cloud, is fully automate everything. And this is again possible with the tools that Amazon gives us and the innovation that we add to those tools to be successful with an enterprise audience. So one of the things that we do differently from some of the other folks here that you've talked about or that have talked about their experience in the cloud is we're enterprise focused. We have to deal with enterprise data types, and that means interfacing with the directory, interfacing with different enterprise content types, and we take advantage of the different facilities that Amazon provides to make that as seamless and painless as possible. So for one of our government accounts, we're using Virtual Private Cloud, VPC, to establish a secure VPN so that from the point of view of that government agency and their endpoint in the cloud, it looks to them like it's a completely closed network, a completely closed logical data cage in the cloud with AES 256-bit encryption, both encrypting the over-the-wire transactions and the data at rest. That's a very powerful combination that you could take to government, who are always concerned about getting their best economic value with our tax dollars, but also have the mandate from FISMA not to break confidentiality, not to lose privacy of information. Sonian plus Amazon is able to meet that by working together in Sonian and building on top of the Amazon building blocks. We're also taking advantage of the Amazon import service. A lot of our customers want to archive legacy data, and that usually comes over physical media. We've developed a web-based workflow that makes that seamless and frictionless for our customers so they can do it themselves all through our application. All they're doing is putting their media inside of a box, sending it to FedEx to a secure address, and within days it's searchable in the cloud because we've taken advantage of scale-up technology to process that data very quickly with our safe server technology. And finally, over the last 5 years, Sonian has developed a significant amount of cloud tooling to make our journey to the cloud successful. So when we started in 2007, there wasn't the technologies that exist today to help make your journey to the cloud as powerful as possible. So we didn't have the idea of a right scale or these cloud monitoring systems or these cloud pricing systems or these cloud cost management systems. We had to build a lot of that ourselves. And over time, we've chosen not to build some of those things and to use outsourced or to use other people's technology. So one example of that is our automation layer. We were doing our automation ourselves, which was kind of a distraction. We chose to jump over to the Chef project, which is from Opscode. It's a great automation layer that anyone should know about. There's also Puppet and CF Engine, but Chef is a great automation layer to make your usage of the cloud as efficient as possible if you're not using Elastic Beanstalk or one of the other Amazon frameworks. We developed our own internal cloud monitoring system. We were trying to use Nagios in the cloud, but it wasn't really great at a dynamic environment and sending too many false alerts. So we developed an open source project called Sensu, S-C-N-S-U, and we actually are giving it back to the community. So Sonian takes advantage of open source in terms of how we bring our technology to market, and it's only good karma for us to give that back to the community. So Sensu, S-C-N-S-U, it's on GitHub. It's a great open source, freely available monitoring tool for cloud-specific environments where dynamic allocation of CPUs is what is really important to monitor and manage. And finally, around cost management. So we developed our own cloud cost control system, which allows us to manage our hourly rate in the cloud. Every hour we get a report out of the system and we hear about anomalies. So the Amazon sales reps should close their ears right now, but we are actually driving our costs down on the cloud because we have viewer control into understanding how much it's costing us per hour, where we might see overages, when there's an anomaly, because certainly bugs in our software can cause an anomaly. There's other areas where we can always keep driving down costs, but it's all in that spirit of the grand bargain. We have to amplify Amazon's innovations and deliver those amplifications to our customer, because otherwise the whole chain of kind of the inherited idea of innovation breaks down if we're not being innovative and passing those statements on continuously. So that's it. This is Sonian, simple, affordable archiving for all enterprise email types. We're available on Twitter and our blog, my blog, greggarnett.com, or sonian.com/blog. If you want to know more about cloud and cost management, and I'll be available with my colleague Rami at the networking reception to answer more questions. Thank you very much.